Welcome everyone, English Rugby fans here. Ireland 20, England 32. What a game. Genghis, what did you
Yeah,
think of
I mean
that?
that was outstanding. It's a sort of game you, as an England fan, you just sort of dream of, and I mean from start to finish, we've just sort of it was unbelievable. But we'll talk about it, as we go.
Yeah, Genghis, I completely agree with you there. Shakespeare?
Yeah, I think it was a very surprising but dominant performance. I didn't expect England to bring that sort of physicality to the game. They outmuscled them in Dublin, so hugely impressive performance.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
yeah, it came to a shock to all of us, as I'm sure we were, jumping out of the sofa during the game.
A welcome shock. Yeah, for sure.
I, I think a big shock to everyone in world rugby, and almost especially more so to Ireland than England. I think England was sort of, I don't know, not quietly confident, but I think England always know what they can do, and they're very much at the side sort of gelling and continuously improving. But I think we've finally seen the England starting 15, or
Mm.
pretty much there. Um, so just very quickly looking at the stats. So if you actually look at them objectively, it looks like it was all Ireland's game. So Ireland, 60% possession, 53% territory, 90% tackle success, no yellow card versus Curry's yellow card for England, four penalties conceded by Ireland versus eight for England, and one free kick against England as well. I mean, when you look at those stats, you really don't think that England would have won and so comfortably as well. Do you
Yeah,
think so, Genghis?
but what it shows is it just shows that our defence was absolutely top class. Um, and it also shows that when we had opportunities to score, we actually took those opportunities, which has been something which we haven't been doing in recent times. So it was just everything sort of, as you said, sort of gelled together, and all the different combinations that had been set up by Jones in this particular game just seemed to work, and we saw the results of that.
So Shakespeare, I mean, the great Khan rightly pointed out there that the tackles for England, an area which has been very disappointing in the last year since we lost our sort of defence coach. Um, Actually, a lower success rate in the tackles than Ireland, but if you look at the dominant tackles, whatever the hell that means, England smashed that completely. So I mean, Shakespeare, what do you take from that?
So I was looking up what I thought. Well, at least I think they meant from dominant tackles, and dominant tackles is normally when the player either makes no ground or actually goes backwards from the tackle. So that's why I think England were never
Uh,
able to get on the front foot because they were never able to penetrate the English defence and the physicality. And especially if you look at some of these players that you wouldn't exactly traditionally think of as the big tacklers. We initially discussed Launchbury, Laws especially, who
Laws,
made a
yeah,
mammoth tackle in
yeah,
the
it was.
end. But if you look at man of the match, Mako Vunipola, he
Mako.
actually made the most tackles. He made 27 tackles in the game, which,
Was it
for a front
27?
row,
Wow,
27
I
tackles.
thought it was 20. Yeah.
Didn't stay on the whole game, but still is almost double. Actually, only compared to Mark Wilson, he also made 27. But the front
Wow.
row was hugely impressive. Jamie George made 18 tackles. Sinclair made 9 tackles. So the front row really came together and provided a dominant performance. And I don't think we can fault our pack whatsoever. They did everything they could. There
Yeah.
was, of course, some silly mistakes, and that is one aspect of the game that I'm worried about. Because if we committed that many penalties against New Zealand or South Africa or
Sure.
Australia, I believe we would have gotten punished a lot more. So it's
mm.
exciting, but with the dominance we had in the tackle, I think, yeah, it's hugely promising.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, just to jump in there, what really surprised me actually was the breakdown. So the breakdown is an area that we've seen that's very problematic for England, but I think we were
Mm.
very clever in
Yeah.
sending the players in at the right time. And again, when you've got Ireland and you've got these incredible sort of back row forwards, they weren't anywhere to be seen in the breakdown, which really surprised
I
me. I mean,
know.
what do you think of that,
Well, no.
Genghis?
What it's very similar to the sort of the way New Zealand operate with their pack, and like you said, they only send people to the breakdown when it is completely necessary, which frees up. Which one gives you more options in the midfield later on for crash ball options, and two, it means that there's a quicker ball. Now the ball wasn't the quickest it's been, but it meant there
Mm.
was there was something about the pods we were working in. They just worked very well yesterday, um, which
Mm.
was great to see.
Yeah, I mean, usually you expect to see a bunch of turnovers against such a top side as Ireland, but I mean, I think there was like 1 or 2 turnovers in the whole game, and they were favouring England, to be honest. But picking up on what you said, Shakespeare, so I haven't seen in a sort of professional top tier international game substitutions to the front row so late in the game. I mean, Mako came off in the 77th minute. Sinclair in the 65th, and Jamie George in the 77th as well. And obviously, when you're taking somebody off at the 77th, that's trying to get extra caps, on paper for the other player. But really, the game's finished at that point. Like it's, you're trying to help them in their career necessarily. But that's what really surprised me is that usually when you look at Jones and his finishers, he puts them in at very selective times, and he did with a couple of players, but Itoje only came off for Hughes. I mean, I didn't know Hughes was playing at lock for some reason, but that was out of necessity. But I mean, a lot of the substitutions were really, really late. I mean, what do you think of that, Shakespeare?
I just think it showed that the mindset of the starting 15 was so in line with what Eddie Jones was trying to enforce and kind of the mentality of the England squad, that he just believed that taking off one of these major characters, for example, I think if he would have taken off Youngs on the 60th minute, the game would have been nowhere close to the same. Youngs was so dominant with his box kick that Robson does an incredible job in the Premiership with his box kick, but Youngs was just so dominant, and there was no real slow ball during the game. There was no stage I found where I was frustrated with how quickly the ball was getting shipped out kicked. At the same time, it did kind of worry me every time we have a very dominant performance like this. It's very much dependent on our kicks going well, good attack and kicking game, and Eddie Jones highlighted this as kind of an English style of rugby at the end of the game. But at the same time, I feel it's very luck reliant. It's very reliant on the other team making errors. It's not exactly, when I didn't feel we were that comfortable all the time when we had the ball. I was getting nervous, and it just felt like they were just kicking and kicking, and there was a lot of kicking in that game. It was an aerial battle the whole way through.
But I think if you look at it, obviously, our kicking game definitely prevailed. I mean, Farrell did some absolutely beautiful, gorgeous little things in the when they were on our 10 metre or on their 10 metre, which just put the ball into space. Didn't cook the ball to the man, which is often so frustrating when we watch England kicking them down the throats of people, and it was just those little subtleties which would make us 10, 15 yards, which just changed the course of the game. And I think our kicking from hand was outstanding, along with our midfield pairing, which is just. I mean, I know you're going to get onto this.
I mean, that's the centre partnership, isn't it? Manu and Slade.
And the three of them, the midfield, Farrell, Manu, and Slade together operating as a unit they were sublime. They really were. I mean, it was beautiful to watch. As someone who used to play a bit of fly half in my youth, it was very good.
Over in Mongolia, yeah, of course. I mean, the interesting thing for me was, as you said, Shakespeare, the backs moves. I mean, the kicking was the opposite of what everyone expected. Ireland's kicking game is world class, and we beat them at it, really. And if you look at the backs moves and the moves off the set pieces, which both sides are really sort of celebrated for, there was very few set pieces, very few scrums, which were very evenly contested. The line out was more or less 50-50 as well. And the backs moves for England were very limited, and it was all about that kicking game. And actually, what I really picked up on was the risk taking by England versus Ireland. So England, for that first try, that pass that got shipped out, which led to that try in the second minute, that could have easily been an intercept.
Sure.
And then if you look at where in the pitch that was conducted, in that opposing 22 versus Sexton throwing what is essentially a stupid pass, which got intercepted beautifully by Slate in his own 22. Obviously, that blew up in his face. And I think the risk-taking and what you said about luck, Shakespeare, was it basically played to England's advantage. But just to wrap it up then, obviously all smiles here at England, at the fan base, obviously with the big win against Ireland, the second best team in the world apparently. Did you guys watch the France versus Wales game?
Yeah.
I only managed to catch the second half, but I basically saw the capitulation of France in the space of 40 minutes. which was, I mean, I have a mixed view of whether I would have want France or Wales to win, but it's a shame. It was a shame to see, to be honest. Shakespeare.
Yeah, I mean, Shakespeare and I watched it over at mine actually, and we saw the most schizophrenic, typical France sort of display where the first half they almost didn't get anything wrong and they did really well, and then the second half there was that mistake for that try from North, and then obviously the intercept pass. Did you think that France basically shot themselves in the foot and Wales did just enough to get through, Shakespeare?
Yeah, I don't think Wales didn't even show any signs of brilliance for me in the game. They were just kind of a very steady, just churning through the motions, just going bit by bit, not making too many big errors, no slips of the ball, no intercepts. And I think they just did the bare minimum to squeeze through in that game. So at the same time, you got to give them credit. They played in Paris. Paris is really tough to play against, I think. I think people underestimate that. Even though France is nowhere close to the French squad that a lot of people are scared of when they had some of these great figures in their squad. But at the same time, it just really shows how volatile French rugby is, and how at one moment they can be either the best team in the world and score 2-3 tries against New Zealand, and then they can collapse against Fiji and again against Wales, where they really had the game in the bag. I remember there was a couple minutes left, they were in attacking position, they were in the lead by I think 2-3 points, and they do a silly pass that just loses them the game. So I think it just summed up French rugby for me.
And I think also the lack of consistency. France lost it. Wales didn't necessarily win it, but Para missed something like 4 or 5 kicks early on, like sitters as well. I mean, there must have been something crazy. There must have been some unbelievably poor conditions, because even the Welsh team were missing kicks, which was dead sitters.
Yeah.
So I mean, do we agree all round then that obviously France lost it and Wales just did enough to scrape through, Genghis?
I think that's the case. I think that's the case. I wouldn't be. If I was Gatland, I wouldn't be. I wouldn't be thinking. I think we've had a bit of escape there, and we've escaped. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny though. That's the complete opposite of what he said, because before the game he said if Wales win that game, they can win the Six Nations. And obviously France away is difficult, but I think that's a little bit optimistic from his perspective. But hey, it's his last year; he can say what he wants.
Yeah.
And then finally, Scotland versus Italy. I mean, my impression from this was Scotland again did enough. We didn't really see the same Scotland that we've seen last year in the internationals in autumn and the Six Nations. But Italy, I mean, they left it too late. They managed to get a couple tries
I think
late on, but that's just consolation, and obviously Scotland dropping their heads a bit.
Yeah, they took their foot off the gas, Scotland, and there were a couple of moments where Scotland did put together some very nice looking bits of play in the back line, for example. And I mean, Scotland are a team to watch. Actually, they're on the way up. I would never take them for granted. I mean, 10 years ago, you might sort of think they were sort of quite an easy fixture, but now I definitely wouldn't say so.
Yeah, Shakespeare.
Yeah, I don't know. It's Scotland, Italy. I don't really, to be honest. This is to figure out who's going to win the wooden spoon.
For sure.
They did what they had to. They beat them. They got the bonus point. They did it in Murrayfield. Good for them. But I don't know. It wasn't a fun. It wasn't exactly a thrilling game to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's not apples and apples when you compare against England away getting a bonus point versus Scotland at home getting a bonus point against Italy. But anyway, very quickly, just a prediction of what the England versus France game is going to be.
Just before we do that, very quickly, can we do a quick highlight of the weekend for you? I'll go first quickly. The Farrell pass to May, missed pass, was a thing of absolute beauty for me, and it was really joyous to watch. What do you boys have? What was something which stuck out in your memory?
Shakespeare, what's the key bit for you?
I'd say the key bit was either the slip up from the Irishman that led to Daly's try, or the other
from Stockdale,
or the other slip up from the Frenchman. The fact that it happened both games,
Houget,
really important moments of the game. I think those two spills were the highlights of this weekend for me, just because it showed. Such
Good
a
to
big
see that you
area
like
of
other
the
people's
team.
misery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, the highlight, I guess, I mean, for me, it would have to be the first try by May.
Oh, yeah.
Just going in second minute. To be fair, that first 5 minutes by England, because then Young's kicked an incredible box kick as well, and then obviously England sort of gave up through a free kick. But if you look at that first 5 minutes of England playing and the risk taking and the tenacity, it was just unbelievable.
No, for sure.
To do that at the Aviva Stadium. It was very ballsy. But moving on to England versus France. So what are we thinking? Obviously over at Twickenham, so that's a great advantage against a France team which we know is its own worst enemy at times. So Shakespeare, what do you think the result's going to be?
I think after that, there's no way England should lose. England will win. We'll get a bonus point, and that's it.
Yeah.
So score?
Score, I would say 35-15.
Interesting.
Great.
Yeah,
Genghis?
I'm very similar, but I would probably go bonus point win, something like 26-9, but we don't concede a try.
Okay, interesting. And then over in Socrates' mind, I would say it's probably it's probably going to be a bonus point as well for England. I can imagine France turning up. Actually, everyone turns up against the English. It's just an old hatred of the country that's basically been at war and conquered. Yeah, not the Irish. That's true. So I would say it would probably be 42 England.
Ooh.
Against France, 28 France.
Wow,
I think it's going to be a high-scoring game.
Excellent game. I'd like to see that game.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it. It's both very interesting attacking sides. It just depends on the French pack and whether they can actually turn up.
Yeah. Cool, boys.
Great. So that was the reaction of the England rugby fans. I hope you liked that. And yeah, we'll see you next week after round 2.
See you next week, boys.
Bye.